All right, let's welcome into Straight Fire a new guest. I've never spoken to this guy. Obviously, I've seen his gambling content everywhere. He's currently at VSIN, the host of A Numbers Game. Gill Alexander, straight out of Vegas. Gill, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Jason. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on. Obviously, you've got well researched in the NFL. We'll do a lot of gambling talk. I do want to start with, it's early August. We've seen one NFL preseason game to date. Is this when things start getting intense for you in terms of ramping up, or have you already done your homework back in July, grinding away in the salt mines while everybody's vacationing?
Yeah. I've done, I think like most bettors, you have a general idea of what your likes and your dislikes are, where you think the good bets are, the value bets. But in preseason, there is a cottage industry of people who really enjoy preseason football in terms of betting it. I am not necessarily one of those. There was something I do. I don't know how in the weeds with gambling you get, but there's a notion that in the past, what we would do is we would do three team teaser, 10-point teasers
Oh,
because,
geez.
because the totals were so low
Yeah.
that if you knocked them down to the low 20s, but you know what? The bookmakers caught on to that and they're no longer widely available.
Yeah, it seems like a lot that's happening a lot now, huh? Anytime somebody finds an edge, it just evaporates within like a year.
Well, the most stark example of that, and you're right. I mean, listen, bookmakers are living, breathing folks too, so they catch on if you find an edge. The biggest thing where that has sort of changed from last year to this year is alternate season win totals. So for those who don't know, every team obviously has a season win total, a pre-flop season win total, as I like to call it, and then some books offer alternate ones. So like a game and a half higher, a game and a half, or a game lower. And those have been mispriced for years. In other words, the difference in just a game, they do not price properly. We were getting more bang for the buck than we deserved. And if you look at the final NFL standings after every year, you see how many teams fall outside of one game of what their preseason pre-flop season win total was. So instead of getting like plus 220 now on something that's one game removed, making it that much harder to hit. In other words, instead of over 8.5, you'd have to hit over 9.5. What we're getting now is about plus 180. So mathematically, not as great.
Not as great of an edge. Yeah. I'm pretty sure you had my guy TA on your pod. I'm pretty sure you've had him on last season, right?
Yes.
That's
Yeah, I
right.
had him
I
on
heard that
last
one.
week.
So I've known that guy for like 7 years, and he started listening to my radio show, was tweeting at me, and we became friendly. And last year he told me, he's like, I think the best Super Bowl matchup is Eagles Chiefs.
Yeah.
And I bet it, and I bet Eagles beating them. And I when I went and signed up for the contest last August, I had that as a bet. It was my best hit of the season. I'm just curious, do you do any of those long shot, say we had Chernoff on, Adam Chernoff, and he had Rams versus Bills in the Super Bowl. Do you do any of those? Hey, I'm not tying up that much money, but it's a long shot enough that it pays out really good if I hit it.
I will usually do a matchup at some point early in the season, and one that is when I feel like maybe there's a team that's under the radar or is not necessarily one of the usual suspects. Now, it didn't work out last year, right? Because in fact, Philadelphia did beat Kansas City in the Super Bowl. So, sometimes you get a little too cute in terms of my strategy on that. Uh, Cleve TA, who you're referring to, is fantastic on the NFL, and he ended up hitting that. He also did very well on a couple season longs, one award, one season win as well. So does a
Mm.
good job with that. But the matchup is not something necessarily that I gravitate towards before the season.
Yeah, you're a Vegas guy. You're looking just simply for the edge, and as opposed to kind of for fun. I mean, we've got like a larger audience in terms of who are doing casual betting online. But are there two teams or three or four teams you've identified right now that obviously like the Bills and the Ravens, everybody likes them, but the NFC seems a little more wide open. That's where I don't want to say you're throwing a dart at like one of 6 or 7 teams, but anybody stand out so far for you in the NFC?
Yeah, it's an interesting year in the NFC. You're right about that. I am, the Detroit Lions, who obviously lost in dramatic fashion to the Commanders last year in the playoffs and sort of flamed out in that game. They're a very popular pick, but their schedule is super tough. Some would counter by saying, yeah, but they have a lot of net rest when it comes to their schedule. So maybe that counters the schedule being tough from just an opposing win percentage standpoint. I actually love a division long shot in the NFC, which is the NFC West. I think the Arizona Cardinals
Ooh,
at
okay.
north of $3 is a pretty interesting choice in the NFC West. Now, that's a different answer from who I think might win the NFC, because I think the NFC is going to play out a little like baseball plays out, which is to say, you have a 162 game schedule in baseball. So, as Billy Beane famously used to say, my blank doesn't work in the playoffs. I think a team that is really, really good over 17 games in the NFC is not necessarily the team that will win a short one-off playoff. So I think the Cardinals are really, really interesting in the NFC West. Kyler Murray has said, I was hurt last year. He said, I'm going to run more this year.
Okay.
I think his connection with Marvin Harrison is going to be
Yeah.
better. They shored up a defense with big free agent signings. And I think Matthew Stafford's back's an issue. I think the Niners still have to worry about injuries. Is Trent Williams,
Oh,
is McCaffrey going to get through a season? And I don't think the Seahawks are as good. But to answer your question, finally, long babbling here, I think that Washington, a team that people think, because they won so many close games last year, are likely not to be as good this year, which I agree with record wise. I think they're the sort of baseball team that everybody talks about, where it's like, oh, but you don't want to face the San Diego Padres if they get in the playoffs. I think Washington is that team.
yeah, it's weird. Washington, I don't, they don't have the hype that I thought they would when you have an offseason adding Debo, Laramie Tunsil, keeping your coordinators. The continuity on that team's ridiculous. I, I got to be honest. I don't see why they couldn't. If they were in the Super Bowl, I wouldn't surprise me at all. Would it? Would you be surprised?
No, because I think I think Jaden Daniels is that good. I know a lot of people are like, well, he can't possibly good his sophomore year, if you will, second year. I think he is every bit, and I'm a DC guy. I know you're a DC guy too. So there's a, is can I be accused of a little homerism here? Maybe. Full disclosure. But I think he's pretty special. And I think the league knows that he's pretty special. This does not seem like a CJ Stroud that might fall off year two. Jaden Daniels makes the right decision every time. And in a one-off playoff system, which is what the NFL is, he is the guy you do not want to play.
Yeah.
I do think Washington, they didn't shore up the defense as much as they needed to in the offseason, but I think get them into the dance that is the playoffs, and I think they can go
Yeah.
very far.
It's interesting. So you like Washington. Obviously, everybody likes Philadelphia. They're not going anywhere, right? You mentioned Arizona. The 49ers, I believe, have the easiest schedule in the NFL. The
Yep.
Rams are a sexy Super Bowl pick. We'll see Stafford. I don't know how banged up he is. We'll see, or if he's just old and managing. But so right out of the gate, that's five teams, and we didn't even do the NFC North, which
Right.
could have three. I mean, you mentioned Lions. My guy TA likes the Packers a lot. I'm bullish on the Vikings, although maybe I'm crazy to like JJ McCarthy. I'm betting on the coach. It just almost, and we didn't even get to Tampa and Atlanta. Um,
Yeah.
so it feels like the NFC is kind of wide open, which makes it. I don't. Do you like it when it's like that or not?
Yes, I do. I do indeed. I love it. I mean, we grew up on an NFL years ago that was very chalky, right? Like the best teams always sort of got there and then they dominated in the playoffs, whether it was a San Francisco team or a Giants or a Cowboys. And they would sort of beat up on the AFC team in the 80s. And then in the 90s, it's sort of with free agency, a little more parity set in. And I think this year, just as you were saying about the NFC, this feels like Pete Rozell's dream of parity. The NFC seems completely wide open. I agree with you completely on Green Bay. I do think the JJ McCarthy thing is pretty interesting because I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Now, I know like preseason interceptions is not a thing. People make it, oh, look at that terrible interception this guy threw, and they show up footage. He threw five in one day. Jason, I don't know, but that seems statistically significant to me.
Yeah, didn't
Um,
Patrick Mahomes throw like seven in a game at Texas Tech? No, I'm kidding. He threw for like
yeah,
700 yards.
yeah,
But why couldn't? And I'm not meaning this in seriousness, but we saw Patrick Mahomes sit out a full season, studying behind Andy Reid, and went in and hit the ground running. McCarthy was injured, and there's reports that he dropped his weight super low, and he's got some off-field issues that he's got to tighten up. But with a great coach, arguably the best receiver in the league, isn't there a world where he goes in for a 13-win team and is like, oh, there's not much of a drop off here? I didn't think
Oh,
Darnold was amazing last year. Did you?
100% agree with what you sort of were drifting towards a great point that I make all the time, which is holding the clipboard, as we used to call it, for a year or two back in the day in the NFL was always a spectacular thing.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just take Washington as an example, and we'll just go through. These are quarterbacks. Mark Rippon was a Super Bowl quarterback with the Washington Redskins in the early 90s after holding the clipboard for 3 years. Trent Green became a really good NFL quarterback before he was hurt in LA. Stan Humphries got to a Super Bowl with the San Diego Chargers.
Wow.
All these guys were afforded the opportunity to hold the clipboard. This is, 2, 3 decades ago in the NFL. Now, because of the way salaries are structured and because of how much you pay rookies, teams don't have that luxury. But in the case of JJ McCarthy, he did get to hold the clipboard. And more recently, we saw this with Jordan Love, right? Jordan Love ended up with a team that he couldn't start with right away. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers was there. And so he got to learn. And there is something unquantifiable about that I don't think we talk about enough. Whereas most quarterbacks these days, well, Will Levis, get in there, buddy. Let's see how it goes, right? There's so much more of that. So I do think that that's what Minnesota hangs their hats on, right? They hang their hopes on that, which is all right, JJ. Let's hope he falls into that category where sitting a year and learning
Mm.
actually does well. Keep in mind with Sam Darnold, you have to replace his production. And say what we will about Sam Darnold, he was pretty good till the end last year, till those last two games.
Yeah, yeah, till the last two games. The other thing, Kevin O'Connell, I don't know how you can quantify it, but he's been amazing as a play
Yeah.
caller, as an offensive guru. And I'm at the herd, and Mark Sanchez always comes in on the show, and I'm picking his brain because I'm a Jets fan. And Sanchez tells me he was in Kevin O'Connell's wedding, and they're tight. And he seems to have a good read on the Minnesota Vikings organization, and he's very bullish on McCarthy. Now, is that him pumping up his friend? I don't know, but I just I'm Kevin O'Connell's like the guy I don't want to bet against. I did that like 3 or 4 times last year. I think I was 1-4, something crazy. But O'Connell's one of these great coaches that maybe I'm too high on him because I don't think he has that many. Does he have a playoff win yet?
O'Connell?
No, okay, they lost to the
No.
Giants, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they lost last year. He doesn't even have a playoff win. And I'm bullish
No.
on him. Are there any coaches that you like kind of sort of want to back a little bit just because you like the cut of their jib?
My man in Seattle, whose name is now escaping me, because there's so many Mike McDaniel
McDonald?
variation.
Yeah.
Mike McDonald, thank you. Mike McDonald, I love as a great defensive mind. By the way, Minnesota's defensive coordinator, right? Brian Flores is a great coach too.
Yeah.
Mike McDonald is a coach that I really think is smart. I just think he finds himself in a very tough division this year. So I have a feeling this year is going to be a struggle. But thereafter, if he's allowed to continue, I think he's a really sharp NFL mind, and everybody who's worked with him thinks as such. I think a little name change here. I think Mike McDaniels. Do I have that right now?
Yeah, Miami. Yeah, yeah.
In Miami. That's always those always get me. He is one of these guys that I think has a great mind, but I wonder if things go a little sideways with the Dolphins, if he might be a casualty this year.
Ooh. That's a
Yeah.
spicy take. Here's the weird thing. So he's only been there 3 years. He's made the playoffs twice. That they lost in KC when it was like negative 30 degrees. No harm there, right? You lose to Mahomes and Reed at home. And the other game, remember, Tua was hurt, and they had I think it was Skylar Thompson went into Buffalo.
Yes.
And I think they covered the spread because I, like an idiot, had the Bills in that one. But I'm like, McDaniels made the playoffs 2 years out of 3. Tua was mid at best with Brian Flores. They get in a fight. They hate each other. Flores gets run out. I mean, I don't know why people are so down on McDaniel. I'll say this as a Jets fan.
Yeah.
We haven't even seen Aaron Glenn coach a game. I would take McDaniel in a heartbeat over Aaron Glenn, who does seem like a great leader of men.
I agree with you, and I'm going to say something that's sort of like in the more, unquantifiable category, which is I think Mike McDaniel suffers from the fact that he is not your Dan Campbell rah-rah guy. And I think because he's more of a quirky, some might even say nerdy guy, which I love, by the way, right? I love, if you watch the Dolphins on Hard Knocks, it was fascinating to watch him. But I have a feeling that if, like I said, if things go sideways, not predicting that they will, but if they do, I just think people turn on a guy like that much more quickly than they do someone who fits their central casting image of a quote coach. I could be completely wrong about that. That's just my feeling.
By the way, is that a market you bet into at all in August? Like first coach fired? Do you do any dabble in any of that?
Yeah, I do. He would be an interesting choice. I don't know what his number is, but I would look that. I bet in. I mean, everything that to me is a good bet, I will bet into. Had Carolina Panthers a couple years ago for latest winless team. In other words, the last team to win a game 2 years ago at 15-1. That
Ooh,
hit. Um, I think coach of the year is an interesting category this year, where I think Jonathan Gannon of the Cardinals is a great play at 20-1.
wow.
And I
You're
think
buying all things Cardinals, huh?
yeah, just because I think they're, by the way, the Cleve, our buddy, has Jonathan Gannon just out of,
That's right.
he's
Yes.
got him too.
They're
I think
friendly.
that's, yeah, if you don't buy into the Cardinals as much as I do, but you kind of understand the point that, oh, if things go the right way, this could be big. Maybe that's the way you bet that by proxy is Gannon at 20-1. Because the Cardinals are right in that win total area where they're not terrible, they're not great, where like you can't really improve on a great um, season win total that much. In other words, Sean McDermott's not winning coach of the year no matter how good the Bills do. But
Mhm.
the Cardinals are in that pocket where if they overachieve based on their number now, he will get a big look for coach of the year.
Let me ask you, you're in Vegas. Any thoughts on Ashton Genty? I think he's a favorite for rookie of the year. The Pete Carroll situation. I'm not a Geno Smith guy, but he's done okay with Seattle. Where are you on the Raiders? Because they seem like I think they won 7 games last year with arguably one of the 4 worst coaches in the league. And now you upgrade at quarterback, you upgrade at coach, you get a great running back. Like it feels like the Raiders have a lot going on.
Feels like they have a lot going on, but their season win total is 6.5, and the reason for that is because I don't dispute anything you're saying, but the reason for the 6.5 is because they got two against the Chiefs, they got two against the Chargers, and they got two against the Broncos. I don't know. Are you winning more than one of those? I just don't.
One. Whoa.
I don't know. I mean, they do play the Chiefs well, so
They
I
do.
give them that. But let's just say they go 2-4 there. And if you look at the rest of your schedule to exceed their season win total, it's tough to come up with five more. But let's say you do, even that, you're 7-10 at
Mm-hmm.
that point. So I do agree with it. I think Ashton Genty is an interesting pick. It is a high pick for a running back, so we'll see. I loved Ashton Genty at Boise State as so many people did. What was there not to love about him? I don't know that I necessarily, when watching him at Boise State against Mountain West's defenses, thought to myself, "Man, you got to pick this guy in the top six."
He carved up
No,
Nevada. Look real good
yes,
again.
yeah. I mean, no knock on him, right?
No,
It's
he did well
fantastic.
against Oregon. Yeah,
Yeah,
I like him.
But the thing is, he's a home run hitter, right?
Yeah.
He's not a move the chains guy, and is like a football analytics guy, like Aaron Schatz will tell you. It's much more valuable to have a guy who moves the chains than a home run hitter in the NFL. So we'll see about that.
Yeah, and Pete Carroll's historically likes, hey, we're going to win with defense and run the ball and just not make mistakes. I don't know if Geno can not make mistakes. Let's stay in the AFC. I've been bullish on Cam Ward. I feel like he's the least talked about number 1 overall pick probably in the last 10 years. All I keep hearing is about Shadur Sanders and his speeding tickets and he whatever he's thrown, 7 for 12 while Dylan Gabriel was 8 for 9. That stuff is irrelevant to me. Nobody's talking Cam Ward. I kind of like the Titans. The upgrade from Will Levis is massive. Your thoughts on Tennessee?
I think you're onto something there. I think first of all, unlike right the Raiders question, Tennessee's in a with apologies to the Texans and the Jaguars. They're in an easy-ish division. And so there is a path to greatness there. And a lot of people are going to listen to this and be like, what do you mean, Tennessee? They're terrible. But so much of what they were terrible about was not on the defensive side of the ball, was not the nuts and bolts of football, but was simply quarterback play. And Will Levis was just terrible in terms of the mistakes he made. The other guy in the NFC that people don't really sort of it didn't really register in their brains how much of a terrible of how much his specific terrible play killed the team last year was Kirk Cousins for all his
Oh,
great career almost single-handedly torpedoed the Atlanta Falcons. This is the same with Will Levis and the Titans last year. So Cam Ward, who a lot of people are calling like a Jaden Daniels light, if all goes well. Let's just put it this way. I don't know how great he's going to be, but there is a lot of room for if he is a credible, competent quarterback. There's a lot of room in those standings for the Tennessee Titans to get better in. And who knows, right? In a very weak division where Houston and Jacksonville are considered, depending on who you ask, the number one or two, in whichever order. I'm not so sure that the Titans can't pierce that.
interesting. Sticking in the AFC, Gil, let me ask you. I think Kansas City went 11-0 in one-score games last year. we had Chernoff on here and he was like, listen, their wide receiver group was nothing last year. And now
Yeah.
Rashee Rice is back.
Yeah.
Hollywood Brown can hopefully stay healthy. Worthy had showed flashes. I'm the opposite, man. I feel like everybody in that division got better than the Chiefs. I think the Raiders got better. Chargers improved, obviously. Broncos might have the best defense in the league. I see the Chiefs coming back. Now I'm taking heat because I said they would miss the playoffs, which is probably a dumb bet. I haven't actually laid the wager yet, but where are you on Kansas City? Can this Mahomes Reed magic just continue every freaking year?
I'm afraid it can. I
Okay.
think that's the
All right.
thing. I
Fair.
mean, by the way, I think if we said if right now, if we said, okay, give me one single bet in the NFL, one single bet that appears to be the best bet of anything on the board, or at least the most straightforward, I would say Kansas City Chiefs, AFC West minus 125. That's what I would say. And
Hmm.
the reason I do is because they've won the division 9 years in a row. And Chernoff is right, right? 9 years in a row, Jason. Let's not even gloss over that. By the
Yeah,
way, they've been to the Super Bowl 5 out of the last 6 years.
I know.
Like it's insane. You're right about the one score record, right? I think it was 12-0, including the playoffs,
Oh, yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. And then they got crushed in the Super Bowl. And so because they got crushed, everybody sort of like puts them in a different category. You're also right about the Broncos and Chargers and Raiders improving. I think the Broncos are absolutely a playoff team. I think they got the best defense. Bo Nix certainly shocked the heck out of me and a lot of people last year. I didn't think he was going to be all that, and he was great. But the wide receiver thing is a big deal. Rashee Rice is coming back. I think any of us who just decide either out of being I'm not suggesting you're being cute with that, but I just think in order to sort of I think about it on my show every day is like, well, it'd be provocative to say that I don't like the Chiefs here, but the truth is I can't go up
Yeah.
against.
I guess two arguments would be, Travis Kelce kind of fell off a cliff there. He had his
He
worst
did.
season as a pro. In the playoff games, the final two, he was non-existent. I mean, like legitimate non-factor in the Super Bowl. And then their tackle situation. I know they drafted the kid from Ohio State and he could be a major steal, but like their big acquisition was the kid Moore, who was like a swing tackle on the Niners. And I'm just like, last time anytime they're played without tackles, like Mahomes gets murdered. And I know the interior is great. I'm picking nits, obviously, but
No,
you got to go somewhere on some short ledge. And listen, we can all sit here and say, oh yeah, Chiefs minus 375 make the playoffs, lock it up, but empty the bankroll, the kids 401k. But I just at some point they're gonna pull back, right? You'd have to think that.
100%. At some point it will. I just don't think this is quite the year. I think we're 1 year ahead of it.
And
I
that
think we're
sounds
one.
very, hey, black or red in roulette. Come on. It can't keep going red, Jay. It can't, and you lose your shirt. But all right, let's wrap up with week one. I know it's early, but a lot of the handicappers that come on here love to say, hey, man, week one, the first place you look, divisional dogs in week one. Also teams that didn't make the playoff versus teams that did. Well, I think Dallas Eagles jumps out as a big one. Any early thoughts there? I see 6.5 juice. Probably I'll end up at 7.
Yeah. Assuming everything goes well with Micah Parsons, right? And there's no dramatics there. I think
Good
you're
point.
right. I think you're right about that. I think that's a lot of points. The
Sure.
Eagles are one of these teams. By the way, when I say Washington is a threat to win the Super Bowl, I don't think Washington's winning the division. I think Philly is still. But I think Dallas is very stacked. I think the wide receiver addition is spectacular with George Pickens. And
Mm.
so I do think that getting all those points week one is absolutely the play in that game. I also, by the way, same division, Washington along with Denver is going to be a very popular week one survivor pick. But in terms of the points, listen, the Giants are an interesting team because
Whoa.
on
Okay.
def on I'll tell I'm under on the Giants season win total 5.5. But I think it's going to be one of those unders where they're still competitive in games,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because the defense still has, let's just go off the top of the dome: Thibodeau, Lawrence. They added Abdul Carter, and they still have Brian Burns. That is like a
Yeah.
great foundation. Now they have to get the secondary shored up for sure. But I'm a Skins guy. Pardon me, a Commanders guy. I would probably take the points with the Giants in that one as well.
So I think the Giants might have covered both games against them last year. I know they covered one. It was 21-18. But you make a decent point. I mean, if Russell Wilson can recreate what he had early with Pickens last year, just lobbing it down the field to neighbors,
The
who
moon
wins those
ball.
contested balls, right?
Yes.
And then win with defense, which is what Tomlin did. Hey, don't screw it up. Hand the ball off. You know, let's let our defense, right? Maybe they're plucky. You're right. And again, another non-playoff team against a playoff team. And the public loves to hammer those. One other one had jumped out to me. It was Browns Bengals, which is always feisty. We know Burrow gets out of the gate slow. We
Yeah.
know that the Browns historically love to fight tooth and nail against Cincy. The Browns are 5.5-point dogs at home. Now, we don't know who's starting at quarterback,
No, we
but
don't.
we do know Burrow is going to play in the preseason, right? He has said, I think he's going to.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that is their what you just said about them starting slow. They are survivor contest killers. They were last year, weeks 1 and 3. To I believe it was the Patriots week 1, if I'm not mistaken, and then the Washington Commanders week
Uh,
3 when people didn't think that Jaden Daniels was a thing yet. But you're right. That's their counter to them starting slow. Is Joe Burrow's like, I'm playing in the preseason. I'm gonna make this happen this year. Sort of like Justin Verlander in baseball. He starts slow in April. So they're like, I'll just pitch more in preseason. The Browns, though, you hit on it. It's Kenny Pickett, it's Joe Flacco, and it's the two kids, Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders. I think, despite his hamstring injury right now, I feel like it's Kenny Pickett.
oh,
And I don't know if you know this, Jason. Kenny Pickett, not exactly great at football. So I don't know. I mean, I think a Bengals team full throttle, that one scares me a little bit. That one scares me a little bit because I think the Bengals might do the opposite of what we're used to week 1.
you mentioned Survivor. I'm sorry. We had David Baker on, who does well in these contests, and he said there's like $1 million Survivor. Are you entering that one by any chance?
Oh, there's more than $1 million Survivor. Circus Sports.
Or maybe it's a $100,000 buy-in, some ridiculously
Oh,
large
yes.
number.
What you're referring to is Circa's doing something they have dubbed it the Grandissimo.
Okay,
It's a $100,000 buy-in.
that's it. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Are you
They've
doing that?
Oh, heck no.
Yeah.
I'll do the $1,000 one,
Yes, yes, yes.
and
Okay.
I'll do that one multiple times with multiple entries. But $100,000, we're trying to set an over under as to how many entries they're actually going to have in this.
Oh,
They
what are you
already
thinking?
they already have 8. I set it at 30 and a half.
Oh,
That's
wow, that
that's
seems
my number.
real high.
Here's the thing. Since legalization, which is 2018 when passport was ruled unconstitutional, uh, the biggest thing I've been surprised by, and I think this would make more sense back in 2018, 2019, 2020 when we first got to see the new frontier, is just how many people seem to have endless disposable income. Like I can't believe some people, sure, $100,000, or in this case, maybe you have 3 friends and all 4 of you go in 25,000.
So that's a good question. Okay, so in the pick 'em with 5 teams, where you're picking 5 games every week, right? I do
Yes,
that one. You can do that with multiple friends because everybody, hey, you get one game, you get it, right?
right.
With Survivor, if you do it 4 friends, 25K a pop, like what happens if there's disagreement? Like who
Uh,
over? That's
bro,
where the issue is. So I don't know if you've talked to Baker lately, but he's going to be selling shares,
yes.
or like $1,000 here, and I think I'm probably going to contribute a little bit, because I trust that guy. He's super sharp when it comes to these contests. But I'm going to not that he would take my advice if I'm only putting in like $2,000, but I think the Denver Broncos have to be the week 1 pick because they're at home against a rookie quarterback at altitude.
Right. But
And if you look at their schedule, I don't like taking road teams. Like I wouldn't take them in their next 2. Then they host Joe Burrow. Not sure I want to do that. Then they play the Jets international game. They do play the Giants in October, but I mean, you know how these contests work. But Survivor could be done before Halloween.
Well, and the reason that they could be last year, Circa had their normal Survivor, $1,000 entry. 3 weeks into it,
Yeah.
3 weeks, 98+% were out. Never happened before. I mean, there's been 60 some percent, there's been 70 some percent, but 98%. And then after that, it lasted the rest of the year. So the remaining 400 plus people, not all of them, but those 400 was a trickle down to the end, and there was only like a handful that chopped at the end.
Mm.
But the Broncos are absolutely going to be the number 1 pick. But the reason that 98% get knocked out, was because everybody was on the Bengals week 1 last year and everybody was on the Bengals week 3 last year. So the Broncos are absolutely going to be the number 1 pick. I bet
Oh,
Washington will be the number 2. So there's a game theory to it.
yeah.
You may want to stay off the Broncos and then
Mm.
pray that everybody gets crushed by the
Everybody gets
Broncos.
whacked. That's
Yeah.
an interesting take. So you're right. Eagles are 6.5. Washington 6.5. Those are divisional matchups. By the way, does that factor into your Survivor? Hey, divisional matchups, tread just a little bit cautiously.
That's a survivor, that's a survivor sort of staple that
Yeah,
people cite. Oh, I don't want to do division matchups. But if you actually look into the numbers on division matchups, it doesn't really hold up.
there's nothing. Okay,
Yeah. Doesn't really
interesting.
hold up.
All
Yeah.
right.
But
Yeah,
that is a fear of many, though.
yeah. Well, look at me, looking all square. Week 1 Denver Broncos
No.
Survivor.
I was just,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
No, no,
you,
that's yeah.
it's,
Um,
remember, Jason, the object is not to survive. The object is to win. The game is misnamed.
Yeah, I play it the wrong way. I'm like, listen, I take it 1 week at a time. I just want to let me win this week and worry about next week. Next week.
Yeah. Most people do.
That's a bad strategy, though, right?
I would love to sit here and tell you yes. I mean, I have said this for years. That is a bad strategy. But the truth
No,
is
that's fine. I can
is
see
that
that.
I got knocked out in the third week last year.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm not so smart.
Yeah, I like all these guys who game theory and are like, oh no, you got to save this team for Detroit week 9. That's you got
Yeah.
to save it. I'm like, bro, week 9, it's 2 months away.
Well,
I,
and the biggest advice I can give is because what you said in there, there's a massive kernel of wisdom, which is weeks 1 through 3. What that really proved last year is the smart people who then strategize. They might be smart to do that after the first few weeks, but the first few weeks, none of us knows a damn thing,
and
right?
that's a good point. Yeah.
That's the thing. And then, so point spreads, our preseason prognostications, all that stuff, we're just theorizing. But until we see these guys on the field playing the regular season for a few weeks, because remember even the preseason is 1 week shorter now too, right?
Yeah.
And so when there were 4 games, every team used 4 games of preseason. Every team used to follow the same script where like they would play their starters in week 3 of the preseason. And they would have some reps. Now with 3 weeks, every team plays it differently. Some teams don't even play anybody.
Yeah.
So it takes a few weeks of the regular season for us to really get our
Yeah.
bearings.
That's a great point. I think I saw a stat that 5 teams that were favored to miss the playoffs last year ended up making it.
Yeah.
And they were all in the NFC, I think, led, of course, by like the Minnesotas of the world. But it was just, maybe it was an off year. Maybe go back to some normalcy. Is that possible?
It's possible. I mean, I don't predict 98% of survivors are going to be out in any year in 3 weeks. But if it's 70%, that's the norm. That's the
Yeah.
norm because we don't know. That's the thing. Even those of us who this is our job, I think the humility of the NFL, the any given Sunday, the humility of being able to say, this is the one league where early on we shouldn't get too mesmerized by our own thoughts.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's like, hey, man, I'm saving Pat Mahomes for week 8. Mahomes gets knocked out in week 6. He's done for the season.
Yeah.
It's NFL. That's why it's so hard and why we love it, right? Gill Alexander, VSIN, the numbers game. He's great. He knows his stuff. Gill, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for coming on.
Jason, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.